Hello and welcome back to a new Lightbox. This week, I felt like taking it kind of easy and doing a more simple project, so I decided to do the Hollowknight boss fight. Also, I got a comment recommending it, so yeah. As you can see, this image is pretty simple because there's not much going on with it at all. There's almost no background, and the foreground / subjects are all very simple. There are some chains, but that's mostly it. So yeah, I just got started on this fun, easy project. First, I got started by drawing out the front ground layer. The floor of the Black Egg Temple is very symmetrical, so I tried my best to do that. The only issue is that I made the floor pieces too big in comparison to everything else, but it's not that big of a deal. You might notice that I worked on this lightbox in a slightly different order. I did all of the drawings for each layer first before cutting everything out. I usually draw and cut one layer at a time so I can plan out the layers better, but since this design is so simple, I didn't see that as a necessary thing to really do. So I just went ahead to drawing the next layer, which is the main sets of chains holding the Hollowknight. These are the ones that you have to break in order to start the fight. And I'm just realizing this now, but I completely forgot to add like the seals of binding on the chains. But yeah, these chains have a cool base to them, which is fun to draw. Once that was done, I moved on to the next layer, which I decided was going to be the layer with the Hollowknight. I struggled a little bit with the size of the knight. I ended up drawing it too big and in the wrong spot multiple times, and I had to redraw until it finally landed here, which looks pretty good, but it's just a little bit too fat. So I took in the sides a bit and it looks pretty good. Originally, I planned to draw and cut the chains that are wrapped around the Hollowknight on this layer as well, but then I decided on a better idea that you'll see later. Then the next layer had the knight and the Hollowknight's weapon. Overall, pretty simple. However, I somehow managed to make the knight look bad. Like, I've drawn it so many times by now and I still can't get it to look right. I don't know what it is, because it doesn't seem like it should be that difficult, but I guess it is. I don't know. Then it's just a matter of drawing a few more layers of chains in various places and sizes. I also decided to add the floor planks onto all the layers just so that in case they show, it looks nice and it's not just blank paper. And once I was done with the background layer, it was time to start cutting. Woohoo! I started at the very front and I cut the first layer out. Everything went pretty smoothly with the cutting. The floor pieces were pretty big shapes, so it was relatively easy, except one part where I cut too thin and it ripped, but it's no biggie. It'll be fixed when I glue the tracing paper in. And the next layer is a blank layer because there's nothing on it, and this will just act as a spacer. Then I went to the background layer and I cut it out. I had a cool idea for the background because in the image it's very dark except for the orange like smoke. So I had the idea of cutting the bottom of that layer out and then adding tracing paper to diffuse the light and to make the smoother transition from the top of that page to the light part. Then I just took a pin and I stabbed a bunch of holes into that layer to act as like the little particles floating in the air, and the paper got pretty beat up, but it's not very noticeable, so it's fine. Once I was satisfied with the background, it was time for the knight. I honestly didn't think my drawing of the knight was that bad, but it really went downhill when I cut it out. It was hard to cut the eyes nice and round, and I was working at such a small scale that all the details were kind of hard to cut out nicely. So I definitely failed at that. He looks a little bit weird. However, I can't say I failed at the Hollowknight because it's up next and it turned out pretty accurate. I'm really happy with this part. The eyes turned out really well and everything just went smoothly and it looked so good. And for the chains that are around him, I cut them out separately because my idea was that I could make them kind of three-dimensional. So I tried rolling some tape like sticky side out to make it pop a little bit, and as you can see it didn't work. So I gave up and just glued everything with a glue stick. And then it was just chains, a lot of chains. And they really gave me a hard time, honestly. They were thin and delicate and I ripped them a couple times. Also, it was very slow going because I was trying to be really careful not to rip them. And it's kind of funny that I wanted to do this specific image because I thought it would be simple, and then I spent just as much time with these few layers as I would on a whole other light box. So I thought that was kind of funny. But even though it was difficult, I prevailed and I managed to cut them all out without too many issues, and yeah. Once everything was cut out nicely, I got my tracing paper glued in behind the floor layers. Then I created the background piece and I used 4 layers of paper, and I tried to cut the edges roughly so it would look organic and natural, and I think it looks pretty good. And then it was time to assemble. So I just got my foam board and I drew and I cut out all the strips to the right sizes and I glued all the layers together. Nothing much to say, it was just pretty simple. And here it is done! I use an orange light for the background, and overall I'm pretty happy with it. Like, it's simple, but it still looks detailed and cool, and it's pretty accurate to the image, I think. So I'm really happy with it. I love how the Hollowknight turned out, and even though the little knight is kind of dorky, he looks pretty cute. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these videos, please subscribe and comment below any ideas you have for